Kristan Yeargin joins us on the show today. Kristan is an ambassador for Students for Life, has her own podcast and Instagram show with us called Speak Out. She is the founder of Be Their Village, which does incredible things for mothers. And she also has a pretty incredible story of her own, as she was pressured to abort her child many years ago for a lot of money. But she chose life for her son, Noah, and now encourages other mothers to do the same. Let's get straight into it, Kristan.
Okay.
Can you share with everybody your story a little bit and tell everyone what's made you so passionate about helping pregnant mothers and speaking out for the preborn?
Yeah. So I could go on and on and on, but we'll just do long story short, the abbreviated version. I got pregnant when I was 20 years old. I was a college student, and I experienced kind of the pressure that you can come under of society saying like, you can't do this. You're not going to be successful. You can't finish college. What are you doing? And like, you have no business having a baby. And then people my age, you know, wanting you to go out to the bars or go out and party or go do things and things that I shouldn't have been doing anyway. And I really I went to an ultrasound appointment, went to a doctor when I found out that I was pregnant, and I heard the heartbeat, and I was just like, that's it. Like there's no other decision that I can make, but that didn't stop the pressure that came from outside, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm feeling all of this pressure, and I had my son, and it was the most beautiful experience that I have ever had. However, when I got to feel what it felt like and feeling alone in so many ways, losing a lot of friends, the father was not supportive of me having the baby.
He's the one who offered money?
Yes, $50,000 to have an abortion. And I told him, I don't know, I probably shouldn't say it, but I said, you take your money and shove it up your ass. That's the truth of what I said. And it's my son's life. And
but you lost friends?
Totally. I mean, what are you
going to do when they were pro-abortion? They obviously weren't pro-choice.
I don't even know that we really talked about it like really in depth. Like I was so naive to like the reality of all of it. I just knew there's a heartbeat. This is a baby. This is my child. My sole responsibility is to protect this baby. And that's what I did. And feeling the pressure of everybody else, feeling alone in a lot of ways. I did have the support of my parents, but I really did feel alone at age 20. So I was like, I want to be that for other women. I want to tell other women they can do it. If it's me going to an ultrasound appointment with you, if it's me going to your doctor's visits, if it's me helping you go shopping for the baby or whatever it is, I'm here to help you so that you won't feel alone.
That's awesome. Because we've heard, and I've personally witnessed, it's often just that one person telling her, you're not alone and you don't have to do this, that makes the world, I mean, it's a life or death difference, really. Yep. Have you found that to be true as well?
Absolutely. I mean, you have people who, if they come up to you and they just say, what do you need? How can I help? And that's what I say. When somebody says, what should I say to somebody who's pregnant? The first thing I say is, how can I help? Because usually there's something else, especially if they're abortion vulnerable, there's something else that's making them feel like they can't do it in that situation. Or maybe they just don't even know yet. But how can I help? I want to be there for you. I want to be your friend. I want to be supportive. And that's what I'm going to do.
How, I guess if a woman came up to you on the street or DMs you, because I know you do a lot of your work on Instagram, and says, I'm pregnant, I'm 20 years old, if I have this baby, my life will be over. What do you say to her?
Been there, done that. No, it's not. Like I am the living, walking testimony that having a baby at 20 years old is not going to ruin your life. Is it going to be more difficult? Sure. Is college difficult? Sure. Is a job difficult? Sure. Life is difficult. That doesn't mean that it's not worthwhile. And a baby is completely valuable, just as valuable as you and I. And difficult, hard is not the same thing as bad. A friend of mine says, her name is Abby, she's an author, it's the name of one of her books, but hard is not the same thing as bad. Just because something's going to be hard does not mean it's bad. And I can tell you that my life has had more, I've had more fulfillment in my life. I've had more joy. I have never felt more motivated, really, than since having a child.
That's awesome. And you've gone on to have a couple more, right?
Yes, I have 3 now. So very motivated, but also very tired sometimes.
I feel that.
Especially when I crawl in the bed in the middle of the night.
Yes, absolutely. So what does your work at Be Their Village specifically do for women and mothers? And do you have any interesting stories lately of women you've been able to serve?
Yeah. So what we do, it's kind of a social media movement. I have all these followers who are pro-life, who want to help women, who don't always know what to do. Mm-hmm. And sometimes somebody feels like, because I don't have a check, $50,000 to Right Students for Life or some pro-life organization that they feel like they can't do anything, but maybe they have $5 or $10 and they can go pick out a pack of socks or a pack of diapers or contribute to a car seat or a stroller or something like that. So what we do is I partner with pregnancy resource centers. They let me know if they have a woman who is really in need, calls me and say, hey, we have this woman, here's her situation. I let my followers know, and we have a Facebook group as well, but I tell them kind of the situation. I say, here's an Amazon registry, go to work on it. And they do. In about 45 minutes, these registries will completely fill and we'll get everything that is a tangible item that a woman needs for the first year. So all of the diapers and wipes that she needs for the first year, we get size newborn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, clothes in every size, newborn 0 to 3, 3 to 6, and so forth. So that financial weight comes off of her, because that's a lot to have the financial pressure. If you're walking in Target and you're looking, you're like, oh, I get a car seat's like $250, and then you have a pack and play, or then you have a stroller, or then you have, whatever all the other things you have to buy, a baby bath or a crib, a rocker if you want to be able to have a glider and nurse your baby. It can be intimidating. And we know that finances are one of the number one reasons women choose abortion. So if we can alleviate that, I'm happy to do it. And if these pro-lifers are willing to help rally behind me and give to these women that they've never met, that they just love unconditionally, I'm going to be that middleman that makes that happen. And that's what we do.
All right. Now I want to switch gears just a little bit, and I want to talk about your family. I saw on social media you recently moved to Alabama.
I know. I'm very happy.
From Denver. It's not a move that you see often, I will tell you.
Right.
So tell me a little bit about that. What sparked the move, and how's it going for you guys?
Kind of a lot sparked it. So we went to a charter school, my kids did.
In the Denver metropolitan area.
Yes. And it was supposed to be in line with my values, conservative, all of these things. And so I'm thinking, my kids are safe. They're not going to be teaching my kids things that I don't want to hear. And then it slowly starts creeping in and stuff starts happening. I'm like, you know what? I don't like this. And so then I start battling the school, spend an entire year battling this school and going, these are my kids. You said you don't do this stuff here. You're doing this stuff here, and you're turning a blind eye to it. Okay, we have to hold people accountable.
What kind of stuff are you talking about? Are you talking trans? Are you talking about Planned Parenthood?
Kind of a little bit of everything. So there was a teacher, well, actually, I'd say the headmaster at the time, told my son, because he's biracial, that he was a victim of his skin color. And I'm thinking, no. First of all, why are you having this conversation with him at all, period? And second of all,
what was he doing to be a victim of his skin color?
Some kid made a joke about my son. And it was one of his friends, and it was just something silly. But instead of getting on to that kid and punishing the kid who did something wrong, he told Noah that he was a victim of his skin color. And I'm thinking, no, talk to the kid who did something wrong. Noah didn't do anything wrong. We don't need this kind of speech telling him that he's a problem child, basically, and that the entire school is racist because it's a predominantly white school. This is bogus, and this isn't supposed to be happening in this school. So anyway, that all started happening. I decided to pull my kids. My parents left Denver. We had been in Denver for 19 years, moved there when I was in high school. They went back down south. They're in the Florida Panhandle. And I was like, hey, don't leave me. I pulled my kids. I don't want to be here anymore. I hate the cold. I hate the politics. It is one of the most, you've been there. There's a bunch of wackos there. So I'm like, I just want out. And I just thought of, A, somewhere warm, B, somewhere that aligns with my values, that I think is going to align with my values for a very long time. And I have family down that way, and we made the move, and things have been falling into place so perfectly that I couldn't have, it's a complete God thing. I couldn't have written a better story myself.
That's awesome. And the kids are okay
loving
going from Denver to Alabama?
Yeah. Noah was a little hesitant at first, and I was worried, being
a
teenager.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I'm like, okay, how is this going to go? But he really, really, he found a really great friend group, and they're just 4 peas in a pod.
That's awesome.
They're loving each other.
That's awesome. What advice, I guess, would you have then for parents who have kids in public schools, and I guess some of these bad charter schools, what's your advice? How do they fight back against the indoctrination of their kids? You were fighting. I remember I was seeing your Instagram stories for that year.
Yeah. How controversial do you want to get? I would say get them out of public school. Yeah. Genuinely get them out of public school. Even private school sometimes is questionable, realistically. And I know there's going to be people who say, I can't get them out of public school. This is my only option right now. And I completely understand that. But the battle that I had with a school that was supposed to be in line with my values was so great. I don't know why it was so difficult to get people who were in line with my values, supposed to be having this school. That's the way they promote the school, is we don't do this indoctrination stuff. We teach kids about the founding principles and our founding fathers, and it is a very pro-America type school, and they have a teacher espousing like Marxist views and stuff like that. And it took moving mountains to try to get people to wake up and see it. Even people, they're fine to go after people who believe differently and like fight that battle. But when it comes to holding your own side accountable, just like you've said before, I mean, even if somebody has an R next to their name, or even if they, say that they share our values, you still have to hold them accountable. And that was something that really was hard. But the biggest thing is paying attention to what is in somebody's curriculum. First and foremost, getting to know the teachers. Realistically,
that takes time though too.
It does. It takes a lot of time. I mean,
that's why she just homeschool, because it's going to take a lot of time.
Yes, and that doesn't take a lot of time realistically when you get into homeschooling. And I homeschool my younger two. But the battle that you can fight with the school is going to be so time consuming. But even getting to know a teacher, I mean, these are strangers sometimes that you're sending your kids to.
Children 8 hours a day when you're talking about elementary.
And they have more influence with your children than you do, because by the time they come home, if you have work of 9 to 5, you're tired, you want to go to bed, or you're getting dinner ready, maybe do a little bit of homework, and then you go to sleep. Like, when do you have the time to actually influence your children and spend time with them one-on-one? So for the people who say they have to stay in public school, you really have to pay attention to the curriculum. You really have to get involved. You really have to set up these meetings, and not just what your kids say. I mean, kids going to say, you say, how was school?
Fine.
Yeah. Good. Okay. What was good about it? What didn't you like about it? What was something weird that happened today? Did your teacher teach you something that you were kind of confused about? I mean, ask these thought-provoking questions so that your kids know how to talk to you, and you're not just getting that, "Oh, it was all right, whatever, I don't want to talk, Mom." You have to
a high
really
school son. I have one too.
Exactly. So you have to
all
kind
talk
of like
the same.
You draw it out of them.
Yeah.
Yes, they do all talk the same. But realistically, deep down, I align with Matt Walsh in the sense that public schools, they're rough right now.
Yeah.
And I don't want my kids socializing with people who are barking at their teacher.
When the hell did it get so bad? Like, I went to public school. My husband went to public school. My husband's a public school teacher. My mom's a public school teacher. Like, we never even thought about homeschooling as a family. We always just assumed we'd do public school. I realized I grew up in, like, West Virginia, like, south of Pittsburgh. We're still, very, like, suburban, rural. And I remember in school there being, like, liberal-ish teachers, right? Like, when I started a Students for Life group in high school, I remember some teachers saying some things that weren't good, and being kind of, the health teacher, for example, wasn't very nice to me, and things like that. But I never remember or felt like, or at least that I know of, could feel like they were pushing this like ideology on me or the agenda. Like I want to know, like, the year, when did it happen? Did the world really just go mad during COVID and all started? It can't just have been the like craziness post-COVID.
I mean, it's been a long time coming. I mean, I really feel like people who are conservative kind of gave up on education a long time ago, not really thinking it through. But I do feel what you're saying. You're like, I don't remember that. I don't even remember I didn't know my teachers' names half the time, their first name, or if they were married. They're like, do you have a husband? And the teacher's like, mind your own business. Like, you didn't know that kind of stuff back then. They don't talk about their personal lives. And now everybody wants to tell you who they sleep with and what they're doing. And on the weekends, that is not a child's business to know at all. But I really feel like with social media, these teachers who, post these things, especially TikTok, have become so empowered, and they think like this is the way, and they turn their classroom into these like mini little indoctrination camps to want to raise up these little soldiers to believe what they believe, when really transgenderism and gender theory have nothing to do with 2 + 2 = 4.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm seeing it now on college campuses where I'm having these conversations, and it's like, it's very clear that the chickens have come home to roost with some of these ideologies. I mean, we are definitely talking with kids who are living in a post-culture. We're definitely talking with kids who are living in a post-Christian culture.
Yeah.
Right. they've never heard about Jesus Christ. They don't discuss God. God doesn't come up. When it comes to morality, it's all relative. I mean, it's kind of crazy, some of these conversations I can get these students to continue to have, and their inability to logically think about abortion. It's quite scary.
Yeah. Well, if you go far enough back, when they took women out of the home and they started working, I mean, if you really want to get really deep into it, which would take forever to actually do, but then our children are being raised by somebody else, and they don't have the influence of their parents anymore. So they're kind of just believing what everybody else says. Yeah. You put them in a classroom with a bunch of kids who...
Kind of like what socialists and communists do.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah. And their influences are a bunch of other kids who don't know what they're talking about. And that's what I love about homeschool is you get to decide who is influencing your children and who they're around. And it doesn't have to be people who are the same age who don't know what they're talking about. It can be anybody. Anybody really can teach their kid. But it feels like it has been a slap in the face, I will say. Like, it is just the last few years, especially like post-COVID, it just feels like, bam, in your face.
Yep.
We're here to take your kids.
All right, so let's jump into homeschooling a little bit. I guess for our homeschooling, both you and I homeschool, and I use myself loosely because it's my husband who does the homeschooling. I'm just the observer and the moral support behind the man who's doing this hard work. I guess I wanted you to kind of explain it to folks who are maybe kind of considering homeschooling or thinking about, when they have children at homeschool, what does like a day-to-day look like for a homeschool family?
It can look like quite literally whatever you want. I mean, and this is why it was overwhelming. This is my first year homeschooling, and I've listened to tons of podcasts, and I've read books, and I'm thinking, I've read articles, I've read all kinds of stuff, like trying to prepare myself. And everybody says, make it to what you want. You can do whatever curriculum you want. You can do it however you want. You can spend however much time. If your child is showing interest in geography, you can dive into that for 2 weeks if you want. I mean, not every day has to look the same, and that's kind of the beauty of it. But for us, being the first year, I did want to go kind of maybe a little bit more traditional. Let's do workbooks. Let's do this, just because I'm brand new. And we're doing it, and we love it. And so we wake up. Sometimes we do it in the morning. Sometimes we do it in the afternoon, in the evening, depending on what we have going on. Maybe I found a field trip I want to take the kids. We're new to Alabama, so we're exploring a lot of different areas. Right. But we whip out the language arts books. We whip out the math. We have science. We have history. And when we go through that, and when we spend, we're very dedicated to it, and we'll just sit down and do it. Every now and then we get up, we'll go eat lunch, or we'll, kind of do different things throughout the day. Really, you can make it whatever you want. But it takes like an hour and a half, maybe.
What ages
max.
are your children?
So my daughter's second grade.
Okay.
I have a 4-year-old. She's not really doing, she's 4.
We'll let her off. She has 1 more year off.
Yes. But it's like an hour and a half. And then my 4-year-old is learning by way of, she gets dragged along to all of the homeschool field trips that we go to.
And she hears it.
Totally.
I swear, every other, by the time Gracie came along, like, she already heard all the lessons. So like osmosis, they just kind of.
Yeah, exactly. And they're learning from other people learning. And again, it doesn't have to be the strict way. I mean, I would say for somebody who's just starting out, maybe do it really traditionally if you feel like. Get your feet under you. But it's really not hard. I mean, these curriculum books are so like do it yourself. They really explain everything for you that I thought it was going to be much harder than it actually is. And I'm finding that it's actually really easy.
It's actually kind of shocking for us, I think, was how, like, especially with the age you're talking about, how you get school done in like 90 minutes. Yeah. I'm like, why the hell are we sending our kids to school for 8 hours? Because they're getting it done in 90, and they're getting one-on-one attention the entire time, right? So it's now when you get out older, so we have a 9th grader and an 8th grader in homeschool, and then we've got the 4th grader and 3rd. I always forget what grades they're in because we don't.
Totally, you can just keep going even in the summer.
When the doctors ask, and I'm like, I promise we're getting to school. We just don't ever talk about grades. But yeah, so once you get into 8th and 9th grade, it tends to get a little bit real. On the mathematics. I was the math nerd, not my husband, so I'll come out sometimes out of my bedroom / office, and his hair and Gunner Bear's hair will be all messed. I'm like, oh, okay, what's going on
You're
here?
doing math today,
You're doing
aren't you?
algebra.
Right.
Yay.
Well,
so
I'm not great at that either, but there's resources
there
for
are.
it. You
I
know?
know. There's online.
Online curriculum. There's tutors. There's even...
That's probably what we'll do next year.
Schools now, there's co-ops so that you could just have like a math class. There's so many different ways you can get around that. I don't like math. If you start putting a letter next to numbers, I'm like, that goes in the alphabet. Let's get that out of here. I don't know that stuff. My husband will be the one who's helping with math. But realistically, there's resources for it. There's so many, and it's overwhelming because you don't even know what to choose because there's so many. You just choose one and go. And if you don't like it, you try something else. And there's homeschool communities that will give you used resources. There's homeschool communities that will help you learn this kind of stuff. What kind of style do you think you want to do? And they give you all these ideas. I mean, thinking that you can't do it is such a cop-out, I think, genuinely and realistically. And saying, I'm going to send my kids to these public schools. Well, did you go to a public school? And you can't teach third grade math? Or you can't teach your children third grade history? But you want to send your kid there? I mean... You went through the school system. You should be able to teach these things you learn, right?
That's right.
I just think it's kind of a cop-out.
Yeah, no, and there's different curriculums. We're using this year, we were doing some with Becca. It's more of an evangelical kind of Christian homeschool, I would say.
Yeah.
We're doing Colby, which is a Jesuit Catholic homeschool curriculum. So we're kind of doing a mix of those.
Yep.
And then other supplementary workbooks for things that we knew the kids needed more time. And were you guys using a certain curriculum this year?
So we're doing the Good and the Beautiful for math and language arts and science, just because I've heard so many people rave about it. I was like, let me just get this and kind of see how it is. They said it was very just open and shut. It tells you what to do. You get it. And we did get a different history curriculum only because they were sold out. And we went with Not Grass History, which is it's Christian foundation, but it's also very literature based. So you have your history book and you're reading a lot of books about the times that you're learning, whether it's a colonial era or whatever. You're reading about that time in history. So you're getting a lot of your learning from literature as well, which is something different. I mean, that's like kind of the Charlotte Mason style, I guess, a little bit of learning through literature, which some people don't think. And our classroom turns into the car. My daughter will read an entire book in the car when we're just driving on a road trip or a long trip. Right. She loves it. And it's like, okay, well, history is done. And you've read enough that you could be done for 2 weeks.
I get a question a lot. I guess I used to get it when we announced that we were homeschooling. We were kind of the first in our family to homeschool. Now my sister's doing it, so influencer here. But we get a question of like, are you afraid your kids aren't going to have social skills if they're homeschooled? Well, how do you respond to those questions?
2 parts. It depends on how sarcastic I want to be.
I don't.
Do I want my children socializing with people who are barking or using litter boxes? Let's think about that. And 2, they get socialization everywhere they go, whether it's church, whether it's a sport that they're doing. We're in co-ops. We have neighbors. I mean, I would argue that they get more socialization because when you're in a school, you're told to sit down, shut up, listen to what the teacher's saying. When do you get to talk? Recess, maybe? Lunchtime?
Yeah.
And sometimes I know at our school, a lot of times they would say you have to be quiet because when they allow the children to talk, they're eating or they're talking too much that they can't eat their food in time. So they say the first 15 minutes of the 25 minute lunch, you have to be silent and sit there, eat your food.
That's the one time I got into the principal's office in 4th grade. I always kept talking during lunchtime. It was really hard for me not to talk.
So realistically, when are they actually socializing? No. They're really not. And then you get to socialize. You know, when you have kids in school, they're socializing with kids their age. But when you have kids in homeschool, they're socializing with kids.
Yeah, just make more kids. That's kind of an answer.
Well,
like I have 4 kids.
Them, older than them, they're socialize. They know how to socialize with somebody who's 80. They know how to socialize with somebody who's 2. That's right. I mean, they're kind of all across the board. So I would argue that they get more socialization. But it's up to the parent. I mean, you can't keep them isolated in the house and do nothing ever. I mean, get out there, get in communities. You can join the YMCA soccer league or whatever. I mean, they can get socialization in so many different ways. It doesn't have to be at school. I would argue they get minimal socialization at school.
There you go. All right. So for the next segment, Christine, it's going to get fun. We're going to watch some videos together.
Let's do this.
Ready? It's like a new thing that's happened lately. All right, here we go. TikTok.
homeschooled in high school, going into college, drink less, do less drugs, are not partiers. Also, academically, our scores are off the charts. We're getting into better schools. The Ivy Leagues seek out homeschoolers these days.
I remember seeing homeschool kids as a kid, and they were always kind of weird. That would be my biggest concern. What are your thoughts about that?
I think it comes down to the parents, because obviously if you keep your kid just inside and you don't facilitate any other kind of extracurriculars, they're not going to benefit from it. And so again, it goes back to the parents that if you are making this decision, you are not only taking on your children's academic life, you are taking on their social life, and you have to remember that. Because just keeping them in their house, that is why. They do not have social life outside of the home, so tell mom and dad is great, but you have to be around other people.
Well, I don't know. My kids spend most of the time at home.
Well, I think when they're young,
I have other kids though.
but you also take them a lot of places,
Yes,
and they're
yeah.
interacting with people in the public, or when you bring them to something like this, they're going to be interacting with other people. I don't think it necessarily has to be any specific way. I mean, as long as they can talk to
There's
somebody.
a study recently that was like saying that like the children who have siblings are X number percent of better socialized and more responsible than other children. So that sounds good.
Yeah.
I don't know. Would you agree with that?
I mean, I definitely think that you have to, it is your responsibility to teach your children how to be social individuals.
In the world.
Yes. How to have a conversation with somebody. I don't necessarily think that it has to be done any one specific way. I think there's many ways that it can be done. And so, like, hey, we're going to go have this conversation with so-and-so, whether it's grandpa or your cousins or whoever. It doesn't necessarily have to be anybody. But yes, I do think it is the parents' role to teach their kids to socialize, however that is.
All right, next one. So pansexual is just bisexual. Can we just, because pansexual is attracted to any gender.
I don't even
And there are
know.
two freaking genders. You're bisexual. But it's like they want to be special and say that they're pan, not bi. Just be bi. Just replace that are completely made up by people who just want attention.
I don't even pay attention anymore. There's too many things to even...
I literally tuned out when I saw that guy trying to tell me crap.
But this is a school. I mean, that looks like a school.
It was a psychology class.
Do you want your children to learn this?
Nope.
I mean, even in small town in Alabama, there's a psychology teacher, a student. She was a senior. I talked to another mom there who was saying that men can't have periods. And the teacher, small town Alabama, said, that's your opinion. That's not fact. Do you really want your kids in this stuff? I mean, realistically.
Oh my gosh. My kids would be expelled just from my behavior if that would happen. Okay, so you would have thought Planned Parenthood by now would have trained their employees not to facilitate abortions on minor girls when it looks like a shady man is pimping them out for sex or abusing them. All the undercover stuff that's gone on in recent years, starting with Mark Crutcher back in the day using phone calls to do it. Like, they're still doing the same old shit and they're still getting taxpayer funded.
It's because that's what
pays
pays their bills.
There was no outcry from these videos. I was like, hey, renewed calls to go tell Planned Parenthood to go fund themselves, defund Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
And it was like crickets. Like, it didn't even happen.
As a mother, it breaks my heart. I almost wanted to cry because I'm thinking about, yes, I know this is an undercover video, but there are 13-year-old girls who go in there, and who is going to...
Every day, she said. Every day.
Yeah, who's going to take care of them when she bleeds out or when she has emotional trauma or damage to her uterus and she can't give birth later on in her life? Who's going to be that person to pick up the pieces? It's going to be mom and dad, and you're keeping mom and dad out of this decision, and you're trying to hide it from them, which is only going to
This is
harm
a taxpayer-funded entity that said they're going to cut out their letterhead to hide it from the parents.
It's disgusting. It's one of the
Planned
reasons.
Parenthood, go fund yourselves, and that is the nicest thing.
Or don't
I
just
can say.
disappear. Even better.
Yeah, well, I like the go fund yourselves connotation because that's what I really want to say to them. All right. You're in trouble now. It's questions from fans. I did not pre-screen these, so I don't know. We'll see. From Bryn on Instagram. What is your, that's easy. What is your best piece of advice for new parents?
Trust your instinct. Trust your gut. I can tell you there have been so many times where my instinct was right. I feel like God gives a mother intuition for a reason. And so many times I kind of suppressed it, and then I ended up doing something else. I mean, and this can go across the board, whether it's schooling, whether it's health, whatever. Just one brief example, my son was having issues breathing, and I went to multiple doctors, and they're like, no, he's fine. No, he's fine. And I'm thinking, no, he's not. And I'm going to have to advocate for him. I know he's not fine. My intuition says he's not fine. And I found somebody else who had actually run some tests on him, and it turned out he was asthmatic. But they were telling me he was totally fine. And your mom gut, your instinct, your intuition is there for a reason. I would say just trust that. I mean, there's no amount of parenting books that can explain your intuition that you have.
Exactly right. I mean, I can't articulate that enough. As a mom of kids, 3 children with rare genetic things going on, you have to be the advocate, and that. Your healthcare team is very important, and I can't stress enough when I talk to parents who are kind of going through a CF diagnosis or another diagnosis to find a good medical team that you trust. That's actually a team where the different doctors will talk together, because some doctors and hospitals do that, some don't, and it makes a huge difference. We've been to a lot of hospitals seeking care for Gunnar and Gracie with cystic fibrosis, but ultimately, though, you are in charge, and you're the one monitoring the symptoms. You're right. You're the one who knows the kid. And if you know something's not right and they're saying it's right, you keep going. And I always, for the first 6 years of Gunnar and Gracie's life, I had 2 CF teams treating them. Like, I didn't even trust the doctor who we moved to Minnesota enough. Like, I was seeing still another doctor, because I always wanted to make sure we were getting the best, most accurate information and the best care. And don't be afraid. Like, you're not like... Don't feel like you're going to hurt a doctor's feelings. Like, who cares? Like, this is about your kids and their health.
Yeah, it's worthwhile. Especially, getting a second opinion is definitely
absolutely
important.
It drives me insane when I hear, like, people say things, and I'm like, well, have you talked to another doctor about that? And I don't know. Why would I do that? I'm like,
well, doctors don't know everything.
Yeah.
And we see that in the abortion, and we see this with abortion.
Look at what we've learned about doctors recently, giving these, hormones to our children without us even knowing, that can make them sterile for the rest of their life if they're confused about their gender. I mean, doctors are not. I mean, I think recently, though, I think people are starting to wake up of like, wait a minute, some of them are just crazy activists.
Yeah.
I'm like,
well, and they're just people too. They also make mistakes.
And they also make mistakes.
Prenatal diagnoses, so many of them are wrong.
Right.
Over half of them are wrong. And then they're telling you, your baby has this condition, and you need to have an abortion. And maybe it's right. Even if it is right, your baby's still valuable. But a lot of times it's wrong.
That's right.
And so you're aborting a baby who's completely healthy, but because a doctor said so. I mean, trust your intuition. Get second opinions. Your mom, you know best.
All right, last question for a fan from Jasmine on Instagram. What is the biggest lie our culture tells women?
That we need abortion. Realistically, the fact that anybody could say that we need abortion to be successful in any aspect of life is the most mind-boggling thing to me. And it is completely sexist to tell me that I have to kill my child in order to be equal to somebody else, in order to accomplish anything, in order to have a meaningful life. Are you kidding me? Like, we are uniquely women. God created our bodies to be able to do this. Men can't do it. We can do it for a reason. We give birth. We're the nurturers. We're all of these things. And so I just think it's just the most bogus lie that they say that, women need abortion for healthcare to be successful.
That's right. Well, thank you, Christine. That is all the time we have for this episode today. Before we wrap up and close out the show, where can people find you and follow you?
At Kristan Yeargin, pretty much on every channel, or at Be Their Village if you want to get involved and help some moms out.
That's awesome. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for tuning in today. If you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. All links, just so you know, are in the show notes there. See you next time.